Alright, so today we're talking about 535, completing the square, and 536. So before we get into completing using the square root, or sorry, completing using, solving using completing the square, I'll cut that out, babe. We got x squared plus, let's say 6x plus 9, like this. This is a quadratic. We call this, you want to write this down, we call this a perfect square trinomial. Right? Just like 25 is a perfect square, right? If I had a square and the sides were 5, then the area would be 25. That's why we say 25 is a perfect square, because it has a square root of just 5. The same thing is true about this trinomial. What are the factors of 9 that add up to 6? 3 and 3. So this factors into x plus 3 and x plus 3, which can also be rewritten as x plus 3 what?
Squared.
Squared. Very good. So that could be rewritten as x plus 3 squared. We call that a perfect square trinomial. This trinomial is equal to this as factored and this as factored. Okay, the question is, if I erase this 9 right here, right, if I didn't give you that 9 right there, could you tell me what value completes the square? Right, what value would go right here that would allow you to factor it into x plus 3 squared? Well, we take half of this value, right, here's the formula right here, b minus 2 squared. Write that down, circle it, you already have it in there, circle it, star it, highlight it. The way that we figure out this value right here is we half it and then we square it. Right? What's half of 6? 3. What's 3 squared? 9. Okay, so we would add 9 right here to be able to complete the square. Okay? So let's try another example. If I had x squared plus 20x plus box, what would go in the box that would allow me to complete the square? What would finish out that trinomial? 100. Very good. How did you get that? Well, half of 20 is how much? 10. And what's 10 squared? Alright, so very good. That's the first step. But then you need to be able to tell me what it would factor into. X plus 20x, or sorry, x squared plus 20x plus 100. What does that equal when I factor it?
X plus 10 squared.
X plus 10 squared. And what's the relationship between that number and that number? It's always half. Write that down. That's a cheat that always works. Right? It's a cheat, you know, it's kind of a cheater method that always works. Okay, what are we doing? We're completing the square. What are we doing? We're finding C that allows us to rewrite the trinomial like this. Okay, so that we can solve down the road. This is 535. In a minute, we're going to do 536. Okay, one more and then we'll be good to go. Alright, so if I've got x squared minus 18x plus box, right? What value will go in the box in order to allow us to factor it into something down here, something squared? Okay? Don't yell it out loud. Think about it. What value would go in the box to allow me to complete the square? Marquita, what do you think? Thanks. Never fail. Start videoing and have to sneeze. How much? 81. How did you get that? Outstanding. 81 goes in the box. How did you get that? Explain it. Somebody walks in the door and has no idea how to do it. What would you tell them?
I had 18 and squared 9.
You half negative 18 and got negative 9. That's important to realize that it was negative 9. But when you square negative 9, what does it turn out to be? Always. It's always going to be a positive number. Positive 81 goes right there. Outstanding. Okay? Question?
So whenever you square a number, it always comes out positive.
Negative 1 squared is positive 1. 1 squared is positive 1. Anytime you square a number, the outcome is positive. All right, what about here? What goes in the parentheses? Careful.
X minus 9.
Why is x minus 9 the correct answer?
Because if you square it.
Half of negative 18 is negative 9. And think about it, right? This is 81. If this is positive and this is negative, both symbols would have to be negative. So it has to be x minus 9 squared. Okay, we are completing the square using the formula b over 2 squared. Questions? Any questions? All right. So now that we have that down, let's talk about how to actually use it. And we're going to go through these steps. Okay? The first example, example 1, is x squared minus 10x minus 18 is equal to 0. Now there's a couple things that we need to talk about. First, completing the square, solving using completing the square is only advantageous if these two conditions are met. If A is equal to 1, it's a good candidate. If B is even, then it's a good candidate. If either one of these things don't exist, meaning if there was a 3 right here, just do the quadratic formula. Or if this value right here was not even, if it was 11 or 13 or 7, if it was some odd number, then we would not try to use completing the square. You can do it, it's just confusing and hard. I would use quadratic formula if A is not equal to 1 or if B is not even. Okay, are you with me so far? Alright, so now, what's step number 1 up there? We double check that A is 1 and that B is even. What's step 1? You got it written up there. Move C over. What do you think that means?
That's 10.
That means this 18, we just want to get it to the other side. So I add 18 to the left and I add 18 to the right. I move it over to the other side.
This is 5.3.6, right?
This is 536, correct. So I move 18 over to the other side. Why? Because I got to make room to complete the square. I got x squared minus 10x plus box is equal to 18 plus box. And I don't care if you put a box there. If you just leave a blank, I'm okay with that. But I'm emphasizing that we're going to add a value to both sides to complete the square. Alright, the $64 million question is, what value do I add? Step 2, add b over 2 squared to both sides. What value am I going to add to both sides to complete the square? Anybody?
Negative 25.
It'll always be positive, and the answer is 25. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
What's half of negative 10?
5.
Negative 5. What's negative 5 squared?
Oh, 25.
25. So I add 25 to both sides. That's the magic number. That's the number that allows me to create a perfect square trinomial. Alright, so what do I get on the left-hand side? What is x squared minus 10x plus 25? What does that factor into?
X.
We just did a bunch of them. What does it factor into? X what? X minus 5 squared is equal to 43, I think. Right? Step number 3 says factor the left-hand side and simplify the right-hand side. Right? We factor the left-hand side into x minus 5. How do we know it's minus 5 right here? What's half of negative 10? Negative 5. We do the half of negative 10. How did I get 43? Where did 43 come from?
Add 18 and 25.
We add 18 and 25 and we get 43. Now this problem is very similar to these that we did in 532 that we solved using square roots. If I have stuff squared is equal to 43, watch how easy this is. Are you ready? Square root the left-hand side, square root the right-hand side. The square root and the square cancel out. And I got x minus 5 is equal to plus or minus root 43. Does 43 break down?
No.
No, it's prime. 43 is prime, it doesn't break down. I'm almost done. I got one last thing to solve for x And I already did my plus or minus, so I did good there, but I have one more thing to solve for x. What do I need to do? How do I get x by itself? If it's x minus 5, what do I need to do to both sides? Add 5 to both sides. Add 5 to both sides. X equals 5 plus or minus root 43. And I'm done. All right, so let's go through the steps again. Step 1, I moved C over. Step 2, I completed the square by adding b over 2 squared to both sides. Step 3, I factored the left. I factored this into this. And over here, I simplified. Step 4, I square rooted both sides. Step 5, I remembered the plus or minus and I solved by adding 5 to both sides. And so my answer is 5 plus root 43 and 5 minus root 43. And I'm done. Okay, questions? Are you ready for example 2? All right, let's do another. Draw a line on your paper. Say example 2. Let's do example 2. Anybody have a question? All right, here we go. X squared.
Can't we just simply factor this?
All right, great question. This problem actually factors. What are the factors of 12 that have something to do with 4?
3. No, 4.
6 and 2.
6 and 2, right? So this problem actually factors. And so his question is, can we factor if factoring is possible? And my answer emphatically is yes. Factoring is always the easier method, right? Well, look how easy this is. X minus 6 and x plus 2 is what that factors into. So what are your two answers? 6 and what? And negative 2. That took less than 10 seconds. If factoring is possible, you can always factor. I would never mark that wrong because you didn't do it. What they're going to say is, though, what value completes the square. And so you have to know how to complete the square. And not every problem factors. The next one, for example, we're going to do doesn't factor. Okay? Great question. All right, so now let's do it with completing the square. First step. What's step number 1? Move the C over. Right? Add 12 to both sides. Watch how easy this is. X squared minus 4x plus box equals 12 plus box. Right? I'm just putting the box in there to emphasize that we're going to add something to both sides. Okay? The magic question is, what value goes in the box? What value do we have to add to both sides to complete the square?
-2.
Careful. We half that and we get -2, but what's -2 squared? 4. The formula, remember, is b over 2 squared. So we add 4 to both sides. All right, what does the left-hand side give us? What does the right-hand side give us? All right, start off with the left-hand side. Factor the left-hand side. What do we get?
X minus 2 squared.
X minus 2 squared. How'd you get that so easily?
Because half of -4.
Half of -4 is -2. All right, what do I get on the other side? On the right-hand side? Bells ought to start going off in your head. Alarms ringing in your brain. Why? What's nice about 16?
Perfect square.
It's a perfect square. And so when I take the square root of both sides, which I'm going to do in my next step, the square root of 16 is 4. Okay, so watch. Everybody's eyes up here. Square root, square root. We square root both sides, and we get x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus 4. We can't forget plus or minus. That's very important that we get plus or minus 4. Finish it out. We got 2 more steps. What do we need to do to finish this problem? What do I need to do? That's right. Get x by itself. What do I need to do with this -2? Add 2 to the left-hand side. They cancel out, and I just get x. Add 2 to the right-hand side. Right? Here's the big question, though. Am I done?
No.
Is this fully simplified? No, because I have like terms. And I got to get those like terms together. All right? What is the answer, though? What is 4 plus 2 and -4 plus 2? What are those two answers? 6 and how much? and negative 2. Are those the same two answers that I got using factoring?
Yes.
Sure they are. Would I get the same two answers if I'd have done quadratic formula? Yeah, I would have gotten the same answers. It makes sense that we have multiple ways of getting the same answer. What doesn't make sense is if we got different answers. Okay? What's the easiest method? Factoring. What method do you need to be able to do? Completing the square. Okay? You need to be able to do that method. Because what they might say is they might say, what value, right? What value goes right here? A lot of times they call it C, right? And they may say, what value C completes the square? And you have to know that C equals what?
4.
4. You have to know that C equals 4. Or they might say, what value B goes right there? Right? And you'd have to be able to say negative 2. Okay? So you have to be able to do this process, which it's specifically talked about in the standard. All right, I got one more example. Are you getting this? Give me a thumbs up right here if you feel pretty good about it so far. If you don't, give me a thumbs down. Thumbs up or thumbs down, one or the other. All right, all right. Some of you gave me halfway, so one more example, and maybe we'll solidify, and you'll feel confident about it. What's the easiest method? Always. Factoring. If you're a guru at factoring, then factoring is your easiest method. I'm not disputing that. Okay, here's my question though. Does this problem factor?
No.
Are there any factors of 7 that have something to do with 2? No. 7 and 1 add up to either 6 or 8. So you can't get 2 out of 7. All right? So first step, Thibodeau, what do we do first? Shh. Very good. So how would I do that if it's negative 7? I would add it to the other side. So I got x squared minus 2x plus box equals 7 plus box. Right? I'm just emphasizing with that box. You don't have to put a box. Just leave a space. Okay? What's step 2? Lauren. What's step 2? That's right. Add the magic number. Right? The number that you decide completes the square. What value do you think completes the square? What value do I need to put in that box right there?
1.
How'd you get that? You're right. How'd you get that?
Divided by 2.
Half of negative 2 is how much? Negative 1. What's negative 1 squared?
1.
Positive 1. So 1, right? 1 goes in on both these boxes. Why do I add it to both sides? Why is it important to add it to both sides? Right? The equal sign is a scale. If I add to one side and not the other side, the scale is not going to be balanced. Very important. That's why I got it in the step. Add it to both sides. All right, now what? What does the left-hand side factor into? What does the right-hand side simplify into? X minus 1 squared. Very good. How'd you get that so fast? Why is it minus 1? Because what's half of this value? Half of this value goes right there, and that's what it factors into. What about the right-hand side? What's 1 plus 7?
8.
8. So 8 goes right here. All right, now what? Now, we ought to be able to just click right through this problem and finish it on out. What do we do to both sides? Square root both sides, right? Square root both sides. Over here on this side, the square and square root cancel out and I get x minus 1. What about on the right-hand side? What is the square root of 8?
2 root 2.
Very good. 2 root 2, and I have to remember what?
Plus or minus.
Am I going to get any credit if I forget plus or minus? No, I have to remember plus or minus. How did you get 2 root 2 so quickly? What does 8 break up into?
3 2s.
2 and 4, which is 2 and 2. I got a pair of 2's, 1 comes out. You ought to have that memorized. The square root of 8 is equal to 2 root 2. Am I done? Can I call it done?
No.
What do I need to do with this negative 1 to get rid of it? Add what? 1 to both sides. X equals 1 plus or minus 2 root 2. Am I done now? Yes. I'm done now. These are my two roots. 1 plus 2 root 2 and 1 minus 2 root 2. And I'm done. All right, now give me thumbs up, thumbs down. What do you got? Thumbs up, thumbs down. All right, you want to practice a few more? Huh? Feel like you got it? We're going to practice some on the smart board up there. Questions? Any questions? All right, I'm going to stop this.